Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughn, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. Learn about us and join the movement at www.togetherindigital.com. And I'd like to welcome you all this week to our podcast episode featuring Meredith Almond. Meredith is a passionate professional who's taken a journey from agency beginnings to mastering in-house dynamics, which is no easy shift. Let's dive into her story, fueled by a love for sandwiches. I hope you're all feeling hungry. I know I am. It's lunchtime while we're recording. Social media and embracing the art of pushing boundaries. Today, you're in for some inspiring insights and valuable experiences in navigating the ever-evolving world of digital strategy and brand activations from Meredith's experience and where she works now with Jimmy John's. Welcome, Meredith. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I've been listening to the podcast for the past couple of months, trying to understand kind of who I'm going to be among the list of, and I'm just so honored to be, among a list of guests that just seem so impressive, including a lot of CMOs. So, I'm very happy to be here, and hopefully maybe one day I'll be able to come back and say, I'm here as a CMO speaking with Amy. So
that's our goal. That's what we're going to go for then, Meredith. It's done.
Love it.
Put it into the universe, and we're going to put the work and the time into it. It's going to happen. I love it. I think that's great. I had an intern once that we hired. She works for IDEO now, and I still remember our first one-on-one. And I asked her, I said, "What do you want from your career?" And she's like, "I want to be a creative director." And some people would look at a young woman who says that just starting out and be like, "Who is she to say that?" But I was like, "Yes, I'm here for this. We're gonna make it happen." And she's a phenomenal talent, and I've loved watching her soar. And IDEO was the agency and the company that she wanted to work for. So, and she's now. So it can happen. You just got to get it out there. Well, that's a great lead in to give you the opportunity to share a little bit more about your journey, starting kind of from agency life and progressing into your current role at Jimmy John's.
Yeah, I just realized within the past week that I'm hitting 10 years in social, 10 professional full-time years in social, which is just incredible. I think when I was studying and trying to figure out what did I want to do with my career, I had so many doubts about the future of social. We had no idea what was happening. So the fact that I could really chase that from being in college and make a full career out of it, I'm just so grateful. And, we'll see what happens over the next 10 years, but I'm, really excited about the future of a social career. But so I started out at a social only agency as a community manager, super hands-on keyboard, writing the copy, replying to people, doing the social reporting, putting together the content calendar, just in the weeds, kind of learning the platforms first and foremost, and figuring out, what is an audience reacting to, which, I think is a great place to start in social, like really getting in it. You understand all the nuances first, before you start thinking bigger picture. So, was really thankful for my time kind of there. And then as soon as I was like, okay, got a handle of it, I want to move into a more strategic role. I kind of then found my path in social strategy. Started out as a social strategist, moved up to a senior strategist, and then eventually landed in a sort of broader comms strategy role where I could still really focus on social, but look at social as like part of the entire ecosystem, which was incredible. As working at an agency, you get to touch so many different things. I've worked on a lot of really not so sexy industries, meetings and conventions being one of them. So, thinking about, Amy was just at a conference this week. I've run social for conferences. Yeah. I get it, and I also worked at airport parking company, financial services, and then got to work on a lot of really fun things. Travel and tourism, first and foremost, was like my first passion. In social, would absolutely go back if that was an opportunity for me. Worked in entertainment for a while, cannabis, like some very interesting things that really pushed me to have to think about social from completely different angles, right? Like you can't just rinse and repeat a strategy and hope that it works for different industries. But then once I kind of moved up and moved into strategy, I got to really start to focus on my client relationship skills. I got to start touching contract negotiations, whether that was between, me pitching a scope to a client, or me starting to engage with influencers and negotiating a talent contract and getting into the legal language in a contract and really understanding, what is exclusivity and what's an NDA, like all of these things I feel like are so crucial to just having a really broad knowledge base.
Yeah.
And it was kind of at that point in my career where I was able to start feeling confident, having those conversations, not being afraid to negotiate. I think prior to that, I was very much like, oh, that's how it is. So like, we'll just do it and we'll move on and we'll get the job done. But the push for me at that point in my career, only being 4 to 5 years in, I was like, I can handle this. This is not that stressful. We're asking for what we deserve, and I think having that business lens then allowed me to translate that to my own personal development in realizing too, as you get into your career early on, a lot of people are coming into the career, and I certainly did, thinking that my manager was really only there to like advocate for me and grow me and hand me things that would set me up for growth. And I've been so lucky that all of the managers that I've worked with have been huge advocates of me. I have absolutely no complaints. But I realized that the only person who's going to advocate for you is yourself, and your manager is doing the same thing for themselves. And that was a really big mental mindset shift for me to go, all right, so if I want something, if I want a promotion, if I want to work on agency, it can be a little cutthroat of this new client's coming in. It sounds really fun. It's perfect. How do I put my name in the hat? I'm not waiting for my boss, my manager, my supervisor to say, hey, I'm putting you on this.
Right.
I started being a little bit more forward thinking with, hey, what is it going to take for me to be in that room? I understand the scoping is done. The staffing has already been decided. Can I listen in on the Zoom? Like, can I understand kind of the conversations that are going on in the room? I'd love to be considered the next time something like this comes down. And I just think it was, it's not, I always like to say I'm like a super squeaky wheel at work. I'm like, hey, what's the update on this? But I just realized that no one was going to do that for me. And I think that was a huge kind of unlock. It sounds so fundamental, but a huge unlock for me at an agency to realize that, I am my biggest advocate. So a little bit got tired of like the broad experience, multiple industries, bouncing around, weekend pitches, late night work, get the job done at all costs, so tiring. It's, I was like, I'm more than just this one role that I'm playing, which I'll kind of get into, I think, in a little bit, but I want to try something else. I want to be in a role that I can like go really deep on one brand. And so that's how I ended up at Inspire and Jimmy John's. And, thinking about like the fun industries I've worked in, QSR is absolutely one of them. I'm so having so much fun here. Who doesn't love sandwiches?
Right. Yeah, I can smell their bread just by thinking about it. I think that's wonderful. I think it is important. You're right. In social, the space, like, I mean, one of my very first gigs as a creative in an agency was working on social, and the API was so different. It wasn't even pay to play. So I'm dating myself, but knowing the rules, that way you can kind of work to break the rules is great. And I love how the roles within agencies and creatives and in social media have evolved to where you have to be a little bit of a creative, you have to be a little bit of a strategist, you have to be able to see the big picture and the implications from an even omni-channel standpoint to understand how social plays a part in the bigger sphere of things. So I also loved how you pointed out that, even the not so sexy brands were still opportunities to learn. I think sometimes people are afraid, specifically women, hold back from going after jobs with bigger companies and bigger brands because they think, oh, I don't have the sexy brands in my portfolio. Well, you never get them unless you go for them.
So true.
And another thing you pointed out too, that I think is important to reiterate, is so many women go throughout the first 10 plus years of their career, never negotiating. There's a stat out there and I don't remember it right now, which is crazy because usually I remember numbers well, but it's a ridiculously high number of women that have never, it's over 60% of women who have never negotiated a job. And it's like, how, if you have to negotiate, it is an essential skill to have. And it's the only way you learn how to do it is by doing it. You can do workshops, you can talk to others, you can get coached, you can get mentored, but you have to actually put in the time and the practice of doing it in order to achieve it. I'm kind of curious in what ways, because you talked about professional and personal development and owning it for yourself. And I'm a huge advocate for that. And I believe Together Digital is an amazing gateway towards professional and personal development for a lot of our members with the community and the content that we do. But I'm always looking for more ways to help inspire and encourage women to own their career development. It is not for your boss to get you that raise or promotion. Like, you have to build and establish that opportunity. What are some ways in which you have, it sounds like you've had some amazing bosses, but what are some things you've done in the past to achieve that personal and professional growth? Because I know everyone listening as well is somebody that kind of falls in that camp.
I mean, I think it's a tough one because to me, it's all about curiosity and conversations with people. So I don't know, I can give a recent example this week, kind of leads me into it, but I just completed a bunch of interviews with entry-level talent. They're all super eager. To your point, they quote unquote lack the direct experience because they're so new, but show promise, right? And when I'm like, okay, what do you really want out of a next role? Like, what are you wanting to focus on? Because all of them said, I really want to find a job that allows me to focus on one thing. I'm like, what's that one thing that you want to focus on? Almost none of them had an answer, which I think is completely normal at that stage of your career. Sure. But for me, I think just starting out as community manager, I was creative in strategy and I didn't know where I wanted to go. Strategy was the natural fit for me. That's where I had more strength. But I just started asking people that I admired within the company questions. I started talking to them about what they do every day. I started asking them if they could, can I talk to you for 10 minutes? Or you want to go in the break room and have a cup of coffee with me while I pick your brain on this? Like, what is your day-to-day? What do you think about the future of this? And I think that kind of helps you figure out whether that's a tactical job description or a direction. It helps you just figure out what you want, what you don't want, or what you think you might want, going for it. And knowing that if it doesn't work out because you're not in love with it, you can change directions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pivot is real.
Pivot is so real.
I have not interviewed a woman on this podcast yet. I don't think. I can maybe think of one or two out of nearly 100 episodes now that have, stayed the course based on what they graduated with, their degree, where they started within the industry. We're constantly growing and changing and evolving and learning and understanding ourselves better as we get older. And the beauty of that is that we get the opportunity to look for that opportunity to pivot. I recently had a call with somebody I was just networking with, like a virtual coffee chat, and she made this great statement. I need to go back and look in my notes so I can actually give her proper credit because I can't think of who it was right now. But she said, job shadowing can happen at any age. It doesn't matter what stage of your career you're at. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm curious about this role or possible opportunity in the future for me, and I'm just kind of exploring my options. Can I shadow you for a day? And I mean, I just thought that was so awesome, because I think we think of job shadowing and we think of entry level folks, or, only doing a job shadow once and then never again. I absolutely think that you could look into that and do it again. So I love that idea of curiosity and conversation. I think those are two great principles and just kind of constant drum beats to have sort of in how you approach what you do day in and day out, to help you kind of learn and grow and figure out where you want to do and what you want to be when you grow up. Because I can tell you at 42, I still don't always know.
I was going to say, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but I just want to be cool,
Right? Yeah. It's more of a list of qualities versus, titles anymore, at least with me now. But anyhow, let's get into a little bit of transitioning, because I've personally never made the leap. But I have some friends who are close friends that work in-house. I'm kind of curious from your experience, what was that transition like going from agency into in-house? Because again, from personal secondhand experience, I know it can be a big shift. How have you navigated the transition, and what challenges have you kind of come across along the way?
Yeah, it was harder than I anticipated. Actually, it's one of those things that I didn't think was going to be the challenge. Like, it didn't anticipate it being a transition at all. And then it really surprised me and took me off guard when it was hard. Which I think was great, because I knew I had the knowledge in the industry. I knew I had the creative ideas. I had the baseline stuff of like how social works for brands and how, to help take, in this example, Jimmy John's to the next level. But what I didn't anticipate was how different working in an in-house team would be from what I had been used to for, 8-9 years. And there's a couple of things that over now that I've been here a year and a half, still working on. Obviously, we grow every day and still continue to figure out, like you said, new things about ourselves, new things about people that we work with. But I think the biggest difference is when you're at an agency, you have a very specific, like perfectly engineered team. You have the role that you play. So in my instance, it was a strategist. It would be, a team of 5. I'm the only strategist. I know which deliverables are mine. I know when I'm speaking up. I know when I'm contributing. I can really own being the strategist on the team and be the expert on that. I have a project manager who's saying, Meredith, this brief is due by this date. We're going to internally review it the day before. It should be like this. Let me know if that's not possible. I have an account manager who's managing client expectations for me. So you have just such a different structure of a team. Everyone is like running down the path of their own discipline. Then you also have the agency business structure of every hour is billed to the client. That's how we make money. That's how we judge and scope and staff teams. That's how we anticipate, how long this should take you. So your timesheet at the end of the day should reflect, every minute should be like billable work, right? Like, if you have too much internal time on your calendar, on your timesheet, somebody's calling you. Hey, why are you taking 2 hours internal every day to like go get coffee with your creative director, like whatever. And you're kind of like, okay, so no worries. I won't talk to anyone. I'm just gonna
my desk and be a robot every minute.
Gonna get the work
my bathroom
done.
breaks in my timesheet.
Or I'm like, okay, then you just then you just stay extra and you work and you get your billable hours in.
Yep.
Then you come in-house. Meredith, why are you not taking a lunch? Meredith, why are you, we're all hanging out over here. Like, don't you want to come? I'm like, can't, have work to do.
Yeah. Must remain
okay.
full.
Yeah. Like, I'm not a machine. I'm a human, come to find out. But there's just the focus shifts on get the work done perfectly. Make sure that before you deliver it to anyone, you have a pretty bow on it. You're proud of it. It should be like ready to go, beautifully delivered to a client versus in-house. What do you think about this? What do you have any ideas? Oh yeah. What if we did this? Oh, okay, cool. Let's make it happen and do it tomorrow. I'm like, do you guys need a deck? Like, do I need to, I can put together a deck really quickly. Do you guys need a deck? No, we don't need a deck. Like,
right. Do we need to go from so-and-so's manager?
Yeah, so there's such a different, I just feel like mindset of like the deliverable that I'm expected to give now being in-house is so much less polished, depending on the project, of course, but the blurring of disciplines for sure. I'm expected to weigh in on a lot of different things, not just social, being somebody who should know the brand better than anyone else. How you spend your day shifts to, yes, do great work, do quality work, make sure it's good, but build relationships, really focus on like, get out of your cube, get out of your floor, go have lunch with everyone, ask people about connect with people about the music that they go listen to, I never had anyone at work be like, it's really important that you like network within your own company.
Yeah. I just stick to the team that I was at an agency once that had multiple floors, and I just remember somewhere between 3 and 9, like if you were on the 9th floor and I'm on the 3rd floor, I don't know you. And I mean, we had a couple hundred people in the office. It wasn't like we were a huge company. But yeah, it was hard to know people outside of your own cubicle or your own immediate team. I mean, they would do kind of fun cultural get together events, but everybody kind of just stayed in their own little groups. There wasn't a whole lot of intermingling across departments and across teams. I'm kind of curious too, does the when you describe your in-house experience, to me, it almost feels a little more entrepreneurial almost, where you've got some autonomy, you've got the ability to kind of be more agile. But I am curious, like you're nodding your head, so I'm guessing that's more the case, which is awesome. But I am kind of curious, and one thing I've kind of empathized with anyone that I've talked to that's made the in-house switch is I don't want to call it a burden, but I mean, it kind of feels like the burden of education. You're kind of going from being in a room full of subject matter experts in the area of marketing and advertising to, people in different areas and disciplines and research and development or a product or a brand that maybe just don't even understand. Do you find that's the case? And how do you kind of work through that?
In terms of social specifically?
Yeah.
Look, I mean, I feel like my experience with the team that I'm in right now is probably not directly everyone's experience. I hear a lot of stories of social media managers. The joke is like, no, I'm not going to post that flyer for you. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't get requests like that. And I don't know if that's because when I came in, I don't know, like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if people, just respect the decisions that I'm making for the team. They know I'll figure it out. I think that's part of it, is if we have a direction of like, can we support this on social? I'm like, sure, we'll think of something. We'll come up with a way to do it that makes sense. But I don't, and I have a CMO who like gets social also, which is huge. I have a boss that gets social, I'm incredibly lucky in the position that I'm currently in, that I'm not having to like manage up and educate on social. And then also I have leaders that are like, you know what? I don't get it. I trust you. Go for it.
Trust.
So no, thankfully I didn't experience a ton of that. I think that, this team and this companies were really good at hiring people for a reason and trusting that people can do their jobs. And, we should be, right? Like,
that's why you hired them. I love that. That's fantastic. And it makes me think too, I wonder now, because a lot of this, what I was hearing was probably more, 5 to 10 years ago, but now we've got this CMOs that are of the social era, that are people who have adopted and used social media as a part of their daily lives. So even if they don't know everything about it in and out wise, they have a good sense of it. And, or people who maybe started in social media are getting into the places of CMOs. So kind of having that broader understanding and education is great. And I love to hear that. I mean, obviously on the agency side, we're still doing a ton of client education on certain things. But it's also awesome to know that you're in a company, in a place. I think other industries too might be a little less firm. We had our Cleveland chapter just had a talk about marketing and manufacturing, and I can only imagine, I bet they get a lot of requests to post a flyer on social media. So I'm glad that you're not having to deal with that there, but you do make a good point of just establishing and building trust with your team and relationships so that they kind of know when they make a request and it's not done exactly the way that they're asking for, that, they can trust you to come up with a viable solution. And kind of on that note of keeping up with like the trends and the way things are going with social, what are some of your favorite ways to stay ahead of the curve for all of our social media managers out there who are listening?
I just think to be successful in a job like this, you have to personally be obsessed with social.
You do. You have to
You
love
you have to love it. You absolutely have to love it. You unfortunately you kind of can't come in at 9 and go, what's going on Twitter today? Like you've got to have you've got to have your push notifications set up for the right accounts and brands, that you're getting that information ahead of time on, in real time, really. And you've got to be a consumer of all the platforms first and foremost. And then also I really believe in like knowledge share in a network of people who are also social media managers. So building the community with, honestly, with other brands that you would think maybe would be in competition of each other, where again, we're all humans, we're all kind of in the same industry, in the same boat, finding ways we can all win, and sharing resources. And, if something isn't really working, being like, hey friends, like, just so like, I'm having a really hard time with this. Does anyone have any tips and tricks? Or, the validation of them saying, oh no, I'm having issues with that too. But, then just relying, I would say, on your own personal feeds to get you the trends as quickly as possible, following the right publications. Pop culture obviously is huge in social. So you've got to be obsessed with pop culture too, as much as you're obsessed with like the actual, tactical job of doing social.
Yeah. No, I agree. That makes a lot of sense. And again, one of my favorite things that you mentioned that I want to reemphasize is the power of your peers. And looking at other folks that are doing similar roles as competition, but as the opportunity to learn and grow from one another, because you are kind of in a similar space. And the relationships that you build now will transcend any job. And having the ability to kind of, like you said, go to people and vulnerably say, hey, I don't have the answer to this, or I am really stuck. How do you get out of this? Is a super powerful thing to have. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get to see it every day within our community. So I totally understand the power of it. I love that advice.
Yeah. I mean, and that was, to me, I think another unlock in my professional career is realizing it's okay that you don't know. And that vulnerability of like, I'm not really sure, but could this work? Could this work? Could I bounce some ideas off of you before you are expecting to see a final product and it's not what you expect? And that's something that I really try to communicate to the teams that I hire is, I don't care if you don't know the answer. Like, I would just rather know that you don't know the answer, and we we brainstorm it together and figure it out together. There's a 90% chance I don't know the answer either. So
all learning. And I think giving people the space to like learn, to ask, to fail, it's so important in any culture at all. So if you're a team leader, please be encouraging your team to ask for help when they need it. and to not shame anybody for seeking out that help, because it is super important to let them have that space to be able to learn and grow, because you never know, like you said, when it might be something you don't even know. Before we got on for today, you had kind of shared some things emphasizing the ability to break free from rigid processes and embrace discomfort for growth. I was kind of curious when you shared that, what were some specific experiences where you stepped out of your comfort zone to lead through a significant professional breakthrough?
I have to say that it was when I started this job, because I inherited a team, had never inherited a team before, had only ever built my own teams. So I inherited a team of people who had been at the company for quite a few years. We're on a team together through an acquisition, just like went through a lot and went through a lot of change together. So inherited the team, the personalities, the processes, the kind of expectation of the role and how it currently sat within the rest of the department. And honestly, immediately I started changing things. And I think that's one thing I was really careful about coming in, was not being like, okay, new boss is here. She's shaken everything up. She's changed everything. Now there's unrealistic expectations and we're all learning each other and all of this stuff. So I was really careful coming in to not like overhaul everything overnight. But I think what I just didn't want to do, and what I would encourage anyone starting a new job, is you don't have to immediately pick up the way that things were done and continue doing them, because more than likely you were hired because they need a change. And whether it's a change or just fresh perspective on, is there a slightly more efficient way we could be doing this? That opinion is always welcomed. And why would anyone on your team not want to work a little bit easier together? And so I don't know, I think that was just tough because you are navigating personalities and wanting to be kind of a part of the team. But at the same time, recognizing it's okay to call out some things that aren't working and find a solution for them.
Yeah. Oftentimes when it's in the spirit of making change for the sake of being more efficient, more effective, people are all on board. Coming in and making change for the sake of just rearranging the furniture and saying you've made change is like the worst. Nobody wants that. So I totally feel you there. I've definitely been in a place of inheriting longstanding teams, and that's such an awkward place to come into, in the sense of, like, you want to establish yourself as a leader and somebody that they can trust and respect, but they already have this tremendous amount of rapport and trust and respect within each other. And so it's really a matter of you taking the time and intention to spend with each of them individually to get to know them, and just know that it's going to take, again, time. You're not going to just slot right in, because again, like, you're not just a puzzle piece. You're part of a bigger picture. And I think that can be really hard for, leaders, and kind of a sticky point where you could easily fall down and make some kind of early on mistakes if you're not careful with how you handle that process. So I think it's really wise of you, and awesome. Your team's very fortunate that you came in and were very intentional and looked for the opportunity to be. I mean, I love playing the newbie at my new jobs. I'm like, oh, I don't know anything. So I'm just going to kind of suggest this, and you can say no, or we can think about it, or we could talk about it, but total newbie perspective here. So, I mean, for the first 6 months, at least, in any new job, I always kind of leveraged that kind of approach, just so they knew, again, I don't know how it's always been done. Here's some ways in which I have found it to be very effective. Or here's just an idea. I think sometimes that does a lot to get people excited. And if it doesn't, well, change is inevitable. So it's kind of something we'll have to work through. All right. So let's keep kind of talking about this whole kind of, I love this, like, interpersonal team conversations, because honestly, I don't think we've gotten into anything like this on the podcast for a while. But as a creative by trade, myself, I really believe that, autonomy and creative expression is critical. It's essential. Like, you need to let people not be machines and create and imagine, But at the same time, when you're kind of dealing with demands of teams, cross-disciplinary teams or clients, if you're still in the agency world, how have you managed to maintain ownership of your creative process to help drive your ideas forward while working in-house? Because honestly, I think that's something that people who are thinking about going in-house side get a little scared about, not gonna lie.
I think I saw it the complete opposite way. I think because I was coming from an agency strategy background where I, was buddies with my CDs, and I was like, hey, like, here's an idea. Like, what do you think about this? Or like, I just had this like line of copy. I don't care what you do with it. I just needed to get it over to you.
Mhm.
But I completely agree. I mean, the creative process, especially for social so iterative, like social, so as nuanced as all the platforms are, it's so flexible, and it's such an opportunity. It's a playground. I don't know. I think that's a great way to do it, because try it out, especially on a platform like TikTok. Like there's been so many times that, within the team, we've had an idea, and there's one idea from this person here, and there's one idea from this person here. And I'm like, let's do both.
Yep.
Why not? Why do we have to choose the one? Like, we can do a Twitter Threads version of this one, and then we can do a TikTok of this one, and then we can do it a slightly different way on Instagram, and then we can watch and see what happens. And so, and I actually use this example this week too, of what I try to do as a leader in terms of empowering creativity is everyone's expected to bring their thoughts to the table. If you feel really strongly about something, we'll find a way to put it out into the world. And there have been plenty of times that, so much of creativity or creative judgment, I would say, is subjective.
Yeah.
And your gut, there's not the science around it. There's been a lot of times where I've been brought ideas that, whether it's in-house or from my agency partners, where I'm like, I don't really get it.
Yep.
I'm not in love with it. I don't feel super strongly about it. I don't think it's gonna do well, but like, let's let our audience be the judge of that. And then let's see what we can learn from it, because I mean, I think it's different than a lot of areas of creative where you're creating a TV spot. Like there's a lot of money in the production side. There's a lot of money in the media side. It needs to be perfect. Doesn't need to be perfect for social. So,
I agree.
I'm, in terms of like my own creative process, there's always compromise, but then there's always just saying, you know what, like, here's my point of view. Here's why here's why we've seen this perform well, or I've seen this trend happen. I'm open to changing it, but like, here's my argument. And I think that way about a lot of things, where you can still change it at the end of the day, no matter if it's a TikTok or something bigger. You can still change it at the end of the day, but know that you spoke your piece about it, and feel like, you never like suppressed your thoughts of your expert opinion, truthfully. So
I love it. That's great. Yeah, it's a great reminder that social is a great iterative playground in which we can test and learn to figure out, because again, like, it's so hard, whether it's agency or in-house, to get wrapped up in and fall in love with our ideas and become a little precious about them. And that was one thing a good mentor once told me, and I say it often too, still to others that I coach and mentor, is be passionate but not precious.
I love that.
Kind of have passion for your ideas, be ready to speak about them, believe in them, but don't be so precious that if it doesn't go exactly the way you wanted, that, you're not going to do this again, because otherwise this is not the industry for you, quite honestly.
Oh.
So I love the advice of that.
And I think social is so unique too, because it is so fleeting. Like the moment has come and gone by the time you've finished your lunch. So
yes, exactly.
To be precious about it is, the consumer is the person who's scrolling and seeing it is not thinking about it that way.
Right. And I think too, that's the thing. It's like, we're creating this for the consumers. We're not creating it for ourselves. I think that's the distinction too, between being a creative artist and being a creative in the sense of, the work that we do. Let's talk about feedback for a minute, now that we're on the topic of, ideas and getting pushback and things like that. It can be a little overwhelming for folks sometimes, especially if you're kind of earlier in your career. And obviously too, depending on how it's being given, if it's not being given well, could also be kind of challenging. How do you leverage feedback without allowing it to deter your creativity or your team's creativity for that matter?
Feedback is always a hard one because it's so specific to the personality of the person that you're working with. I'm a Cancer. I have a tough exterior, but I'm very sensitive. So, I can handle it, but am I going to think about it on my drive home and maybe feel a type of way about it? Sure. But I think what I've learned is like, as long as I can sit with it and then figure out what to do with it, I'd give myself a beat. I prefer it. Like I need feedback. I don't want just straight validation. I like that idea. Okay, well, what can I change? Like, can you build on it? Can you tell me that the copy needs to be adjusted? Like something, right? Like there's some level of partnership and collaboration in that as well. I'm personally a really big fan of very direct feedback. Change this, do this,
Yep.
Make the letter A bigger.
Yeah.
Change the color to this. So that's how I give feedback, which is not always preferred. You said change this. Did you not like the rest of it? Oh no, I loved the rest of it. I just forgot to say that.
Right. But that's great self-awareness to practice. I think oftentimes it's a great lesson. We give feedback the way in which we like to get. In most instances, I've had some people who give such piss poor feedback that I'm like, I can't imagine this is the way that they like having to receive feedback, but I think they're just mirroring the ways in which they were given feedback in the past because they feel that's effective. And usually it's just kind of bold blanket statements and then storming off in like a fury over something small and stupid and sitting there going, that wasn't constructive, that wasn't helpful. So I think you're right. It's a mix of being, specific, like clear, but kind also, I think is a part of it. We have a podcast several episodes back now with Kim Scott talking about radical candor. So if you struggle with this, that's a great book. If you're looking to be able to give clear but kind feedback, if people have told you you're intimidating or overly direct, it's a good balance for that. If people say, you never tell me, you always tell me what I want to hear, you don't tell me what I need to do to push myself and change, also a good book for you to read. And then another book I'll refer to, because I'm constantly referring to books in our podcast, both of these I've referred to before. Adam Grant, Give and Take. He talks about our disagreeable givers and looking for those people who are willing to disagree with you, but they're doing it from a place of good because they want to give something. They're not looking to take. They're not looking to disagree just to disagree, because we know that there's people out there, those devil advocates that drive us absolutely bonkers. So those are two good books and points of reference, I think, for kind of finding and getting feedback, into your world in a way that makes you effective at giving it and at receiving it, because you're right, it is a very important part of how we grow.
It's been a few years since I read Radical Candor, so I should probably pick that one back up.
Right. I keep it, and it is definitely one that I pick up just to kind of refresh and remind myself of like really some good tactics and strategies as well. I think that's what I love about her book. It's full of nice diagrams and illustrations to help you understand and remember the principles, so you don't have to read it cover to cover every time. So yeah, It's a great one. All right, let's talk a little bit about this whole idea of balancing or I don't want to say balancing, but integrating is probably the better word. Passion for your professional life and your personal life. So, you obviously have a love for social media. You seem to be really enjoying your time in what you're doing with Jimmy John's. Like, how are you kind of working this into like the bigger picture of your life and the integration of balance of things that you're passionate about?
It's so fair. And I think because of my passion with social and brainstorming and daydreaming, I'm thankful that I can have somewhere to focus that energy. And then it pays me. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I am going to be using social like that anyway.
Mhm.
So to have something that during the day, I have almost just this platform to give it some meaning to, currently the brand being Jimmy John's,
Yeah.
I it's just a natural thing. So if I wasn't in this role, if I wasn't doing this,
Right.
I would be sending it to somebody. Like, I would be like, oh my God, you guys should totally partner with this person. Have you seen this trend? You should totally be doing this. I mean, it's just to me so natural that I'm so incredibly thankful to be in a place that I'm not having to find a freelance opportunity to scratch that itch. This is my job. So integrating that is so seamless to me.
Mhm.
And I don't know, can't reiterate how, like, what a perfect fit this is, and hope that that kind of feeling continues the rest of my career.
Yeah. Well, and I think kind of being aware of and knowing like what are your passions and interests and just pursuing those unabashedly is great. I think it's something that we hold back from doing. I think we often tend to go and look for opportunities that we think will impress others versus fulfill ourselves. So kind of being able to know and understand what you like, what your interests are, in and outside of work, right? Because you're a whole person. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are some ways now that you're kind of experiencing less of the hashtag agency life, which can be pretty imbalanced and unintegrated? What are some ways that you're kind of finding balance between your kind of career and personal interests?
Well, I'm also a fitness instructor. I don't know if I told you that.
Oh, that's awesome.
So very
Yeah,
different creative
very.
outlet. But I come up with my own choreography, and I love just being active. So that to me is a great personal balance, because obviously physical health helps you with your mental health. And so I found that outlet also a few years ago. And again, just like still creative, a very different way to be creative and be active. So that's a huge outlet for me personally. And then also just, I mean, I'm thankful to, I have 3 animals at home
Uh-huh.
that unconditionally love me no matter how my day has gone.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
um, they're a great resource as well.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love that. That's great. We actually have a Together Digital Pets of TD channel as well. And I mean, I've
Cute.
got animals at home too, but I love seeing pictures of all of everybody else's kittens and dogs. You can't be too mad for too long when you get to look at kittens and puppies. So I feel you there on the fur babies.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's taken me probably many a years, although I feel like you've stepped into it a little bit earlier, but being more unapologetically yourself, you can find that can be very empowering. However, really scary sometimes too. I was curious if you had a moment in your career when you were able to embrace your authentic self, and that something kind of doing that led to a positive outcome, or maybe even strengthened a relationship that you had professionally.
I don't know that there's one time. But I do think the things that I have gotten criticism for in how I deliver feedback, how direct I am, how heads down I am, are the same things that get me the opportunities that I deserve. And the trust that, yeah, that I earn within the team. I think yes, Meredith's like this, but she's going to get it done. Like, if there's anyone when something hits the fan that I can go to and say, can you help us figure this out? She's going to come through.
Yeah.
I, you know, am open to public speaking. I am interested in kind of strengthening that skill for myself, and I'm not afraid to be on my own. So I got to go to the UK when I was like 24 and speak at a conference by myself. Like, that's wild to me.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's awesome.
When I was like very early in my career, just a couple years, I remember this is when I was working in tourism. I worked in Puerto Rico a lot for the tourism company there. And I was like maybe 23, 24, like again, green. The only one in the room that was probably so early in their career, 15, 20 years of experience. And then there's me, the little social girl.
Yeah.
But I was the voice from my agency. I was the voice of social, like they knew that I would go and not sit back in the corner of the room and take notes. They knew that I would be an advocate for the company and an advocate for my client, and not afraid to, and to not be intimidated by being the least experienced person in the room. But then also to have the humility of like not being egotistical and acting like I know everything. So, again, there's not like this one example, but I do think that the things that people have criticism over are also the things that have allowed me to have these opportunities that have opened doors for me, and that people do a respect of, again, like, if you are going to have me on your team, I'm going to have your back. I'm going to like mama bear you and protect you. And we're going to get the work done. Like we're going to do it. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's truly the only way to be known and doing the things that you want to be doing is unapologetically being yourself and letting people be known for it. And I think there's times when, and then you're going to experience this as you get older. I hear it from a lot of our members. We've got members as upwards of like 60 years old, maybe even older, women specifically. You have to smile more. You can't have resting bitch face. You have to
I just rolled my eyes. I'm so sorry.
Right? It's okay. No, and I'm glad you said it audibly for our podcast listeners, because we all should have rolled our eyes. As women, especially, throwing on ageism on top of that. I think we need more women kind of standing in their space and owning their space and being who they are and showing how that's the strength and not a weakness, even though it might be criticized. One, because if you flipped it, it wouldn't be the same for men. It's how you always know we're dealing with something a little sexist here, is if you change the genders, would it be the same? No. But it also gives permission to other women to sort of stand in their own presence and to lean into their strengths so that others know who you are and what you're there for and what you're about. And then that again opens those doors and opportunities to get you the chance to do those kinds of things. Because otherwise, if you sit back and try to be and act like everyone else, you're not going to stand out. You're not going to get the opportunities to walk into the places and the cultures that you could have impact on, that will actually embrace who you are and how you do things versus tear you down for them. So I think even without one perfect example, that's such good advice that you gave.
And I think I just add to color that is, there's being unapologetically yourself and really staying true to your style, your working style, without being stubborn and not compromising. Like there's a difference in, instead of being like, well, sorry, this is the way that I am, this is the way that I'm going to do things, and still being true to yourself, but compromising with the team that you're working on or the environment that you're working in to figure out how to pull your strengths out to work in that scenario. And I think a lot of times when people hear like, be unapologetically yourself and, stay strong, it's like, that means that I shouldn't change at all, which is so, toxic. Like that's so not what we're saying. And,
that's a fine point.
I hope that I continue to stay true to who I am, but, adapt as teams change and as the work changes.
Yeah, it is a fine balance for sure. One, because of societal pressures, but two, because we don't want to be walking around being jerks.
Yeah.
That's not
first and foremost, be nice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just be nice, be pleasant, smile more, boys. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I absolutely agree. You don't want to be so blinded by it. But I think, I feel like a lot of folks in most instances, our listeners are the people who've kind of fallen into that camp of holding back on who they are or not even going out and exploring who they are. through the practice of self-awareness and or personal development to sort of know and see what those strengths are. I mean, to even just look at what things people might criticize you for and say, rather than changing that, maybe that's like something I actually lean towards and I help others understand, like, this is how I find it most effective to work and communicate. I understand that this might not be best for you, but this is what you can expect from me. What do you need from me, or what can I do for you or understand about you to make this, more balanced? To me, that's a much more fair approach
Completely.
than just storming in and saying, I'm going to be unapologetically me. But I think we need the slightly more aggressive language because we fall too far to the other camp.
Totally fair. I love the clarification of like stating expectations early.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
huge.
Yeah, I agree. Especially coming into new teams. I think it's such an important thing to do for groups. All right, last question, and then we gotta wrap it unless we have questions from our audience. We've got a couple folks listening live with us today. I'll keep an eye on the chat. If we don't have any other questions, I'll let you answer this last one, Meredith. All right, looking back at your career journey thus far, what advice would you give to aspiring professionals in the digital and social media space, especially those who might be looking at navigating agency and in-house dynamics?
There's so many things that I would say, and I mean, I think I need another hour with you. First, with social, you're never gonna know the way. You're never gonna have the answer. You're gonna have an answer, and you're gonna have a way. I think knowing that there's never going to be kind of this point of, all right, I got it, I know everything, because the next day a new platform comes out, keeps you in this like growth and curiosity mentality mindset of, okay, well, like, what does today bring? That's going to make you super successful. I think from a personal level, regardless of your seniority and regardless of your current role, there's an avenue for your voice to be heard, and you deserve the opportunity to have your opinion and your thought put out there. Yeah. That might be in a one-on-one with your boss. That might be pulling somebody aside. That might be sending an unsolicited email to say like, hey, this is just what's on my mind. Do with it what you will. There's a way to communicate something. If you feel strongly about something, don't ever feel like you can't. Yeah. And then I think we just touched on this a little bit, but I think it's the concept of just not conceding who you are and the strength of your working style at the cost of your sanity or at the cost of quality of work. And always find a way to kind of meet in the middle with the personalities that are around you. And I love that, stating expectations up front early and continuing to reset those expectations as you go. There's so much to be said about that, and so important as you, again, work on new teams and work with new clients and work with new, projects and talent. And every single person you work with is going to have a different way of having those expectations. So, just staying true to yourself, asking a lot of questions, I think, especially early in your career, knowing that you're there to learn, but you still deserve to have a say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Meredith. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences and lessons that you've learned thus far. I feel like everybody listening, hopefully you learned at least something new today while you were with us. It was great having you with us. Next week and the week after, we're actually on break. We've got our national conference happening on October 12th. I don't know if this will be published before then, but if it is, check it out, sign up, come see us in Cincinnati. It's going to be a fantastic day. And then when we come back, we're actually talking about change. We're talking about change and how to embrace it and processes and ways in which you can implement it in small ways in your daily life that can lead to bigger change with an innovation specialist. So hopefully you all can join us in a couple of weeks. That'll be October 20th. But until then, keep asking, keep giving, keep growing and doing amazing things out there. Thank you all for listening. And thank you again, Meredith.
Thank you.